Whether you're new to sewing or a seasoned stitcher, sewing a scarf expands your wardrobe while giving you a great sense of accomplishment. Rayons, silks, blends, laces are just a few of the fabrics that can be sewn, serged, or tied into great accessories. Donna Fenske, a member of the Sewing with Nancy team who helped develop this program, is with me to share our sensational scarf projects. Donna, we're going to start with a flashback scarf from 2005, I think.
You know, chenille scarves are still very popular. Select over a yard of fabric, creatively cut into strips, stack the layers, stitch rows down the center, and then cut. After washing and drying, the fabric blooms and the boutique-style scarf is ready to wear.
Sensational scarves, that's what's coming up next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, makers of sewing, knitting, quilting, and embroidery products for over 25 years. Experience the Clover difference. Amazing designs and Class A needles.
Yarn-dyed fabric, or fabric that looks almost the same on the right or the wrong side, is the fabric of choice for this scarf. And Donna, the yardage is simple.
It's basically a yard and a quarter of fabric. It's 45 inches wide. You cut a square about 45 inches.
And to create these scarves, we worked with rayon batik fabrics, and we have a 45-inch length, which is a yard and a fourth, and it's about by 43, 44 inches wide.
Right.
Not quite a square, but we're going to do some creative folding.
Right, and what we're going to do is kind of fold it diagonally to create kind of a bias angle here. And then we're going to, again, flip the other corner down, fold on fold. We're stacking them really nice and even.
And you'll notice that our lower edge, the fabrics aren't quite lining up, but they're parallel. That's the important part. And then we're going to do some cutting and kind of make certain that these folds are meeting, just to meet them up a little bit better. There we go. And because a ruler isn't generally as long as your folded fabric, we'd fold this up and then cut into sections.
Right, and the first cut, since we're on the fold, we take the ruler and just cut like a 3-inch strip.
So just align your ruler, cut a 3-inch strip, and underneath we have all
magically
the cuts.
cut them. And after the first cut of the 3-inch strip, the remainders are 6-inch strips.
So you can see we have all of this, the pieces get smaller and smaller and smaller, and we're going to stack the fabric to make the chenille scarf.
The first cut, they kind of call it the foundation piece because it's the full length of the
diagonal,
the diagonal and the full length of the scarf. It might be a little shorter, but it is our foundation piece.
It's a long piece. The subsequent pieces are placed on top. 2 layers on one side, 2 layers on the other side. And the edges and the lengths will not be the same.
Right. So we'll have to do a little piecing together.
And when we start, what we're going to do is, since the angle of this second piece is totally on the bias, and you saw that we had things angled at a point, we're just going to maybe cut off that corner. And we're going to make certain that the foundation piece is going to be, approximately 1/2 inch longer at its shortest part than the top layers. And you'll see why in just a few minutes. Okay, and now down at your end, it's not going to be as long, so we would take a shorter piece
and piece it in place.
And not really piece it, overlap it.
Overlap it, right. And also, prior to this too, if you want to eliminate the selvage edge, you could cut that off ahead of time. Sometimes when we're cutting, it is a little challenging at that selvage.
And so what I'm doing is, Donna is trimming as I'm placing the second layer. And I've cut that corner off, and I will flip it so that the prettiest side is out and lay this down. So I have the foundation piece and 2 layers stacked one on top of the other, and when one gets a little short, I overlay the second piece on top, and now just do a little bit of pinning.
Of course, we would take more time to get the layers layered properly, but what we're going to do now too is just flip the scarf over so that we can add 2 layers to this side as well.
So 2 layers on each side of the foundation piece, and you know the drill. Just kind of trim this top edge so that it forms a peak, and try to align all the layers. So I think they get the general idea. We have another one already pinned.
And the beauty of this one is that it's also a plaid, and you can easily see how the bias is
Right.
created.
So here's our scarf. That foundation piece is longer. And then the next step would be to use your ruler and chalk and do some marking.
And basically you're going to start in the center of the scarf, and you would mark the full length of the center of the scarf.
And since this is a 6-inch wide basic cut, we'll place the ruler on 3 inches and mark the center line, the stitching line. Here's a close-up of doing some stitching, and you can either use a straight stitch or a wobble stitch, a zigzag, a very narrow zigzag to stitch down the center. Then all subsequent stitches are a presser foot width apart, so give or take a little bit better than 1/4 of an inch. It's kind of mindless sewing. You just stitch and stitch and stitch. So if you need to think about something, do that while you're doing this stitching. And the stitching you'll see is very dark. You would be stitching in a complementary color, but then you're going to do the cutting.
The next thing is the cutting. And because the foundation fabric is a little longer, it enables us to get into our little channels and cut evenly. So this is a little chenille cutter that makes every cut perfect. We have other cutting tools as well. You could also, if you have an electric scissors, cut down the center the full length. And then we also have one more, which is, kind of chenille cutter as well. It has a longer toe, and the toe feeds through the channel while the blade is cutting and not cutting through the foundation layer.
And that foundation layer is so important, and then you would flip it over and do the same cutting on the reverse side. After you've done the cutting, then you're going to be, if you'd like to create fringe, as we had on our sample, we have some stitching about 3 to 4 inches from the edge, a heavy zigzag stitch, and then cut up to the area so that you're creating fringe. And what we also like to do is kind of clean finish the edge, just trim away an extra 1/4 of an inch. Wash some towels. Put your scarf in with the washing machine and wash and dry the scarf, and when it comes out of the dryer,
It
presto.
has bloomed beautifully.
It's a very soft scarf, very drapable and wearable, and all made with 1 1/4 yards of fabric, creative cutting, and stitching. Can't you just imagine the next scarf worn to a summer wedding? We call it the fairy dust scarf, as the layers almost seem to have a mystical appearance. 2 layers of bridal illusion or lace, plus rotary cutting and creative tying are all the steps that are needed to make this no-sew scarf project. You can sew without really sewing. Working with fabric and tying, the large rectangles of fabric can create a very whimsical scarf, floating. It's pretty.
I just loved how sheer it was, and just that I didn't have to do any sewing.
And sometimes that's good.
Yeah, you can just tie at the TV and
Enjoy.
create a really quick scarf.
A shawl could be also made. You can vary the widths of the 2 layers of bridal illusion, or we haven't cut this piece yet, but this is a piece of lace by the yardage. And if you'd like to have a shawl perhaps for a wedding party or for prom, this is a perfect fabric. But 2 layers are what you'll need. And you'll be creating this scarf much like a fleece blanket. Some of you may have created the no-tie fleece blankets. The concept is the same, the fabric totally unique.
And basically what we have is at each corner, depending on the size of the fringe that you would like, you would cut out a square. We're putting on a 4-inch fringe, so we cut a 4-inch square out.
And you do this at all corners. Now we're making quite a narrow scarf just because we're working on a small board, but have these layers pinned together in the middle. And if you have another cutting mat, it's a perfect time to use it.
Because this, if you use another cutting mat on top of your fabric, and when it comes to cutting the fringe, you don't have to worry about not being even or cutting beyond your 4-inch mark or whatever. So with the mat, it prevents you from making that mistake.
So I'm just cutting every inch. And then if you made a lot of fleece blankets, perhaps you might have one of these notions that automatically have the marks cut for you with little teardrop areas. I'm just going to slide this down a little bit, Donna, so that I can get in the teardrop and cut every inch. This would allow me or require me to skip every other teardrop opening. And you just cut, so you can use one of these two techniques so that you have the fringed edge. Now because this is bridal illusion or lace, it doesn't have to be that accurate. And we're going to do some creative tying.
What you can do is just tie once over, right over left and left over right, and you can just leave it like that, or you can tie each fringe by itself to get an interesting look, and then tie again at the base, right over left, left over right. On our samples you can see kind of the tying technique. We'll have it fringed and then tied together.
And if you find in a sample, do a sample, you want to make the fringe longer, it's even a little bit easier to tie double knots if you have maybe a 5 to 6 inch length tie. But it's much the same concept, and it's light and like fairy dust and fun to wear. And remember the fabrics, a lightweight tulle, bridal illusion, or lace by the yard, each 2 layers, creative cutting, and you have a no-sew scarf. Silk or silk-like fabrics are the perfect candidates for our next sensational scarf version. Choose your favorite drapable fabric. Perhaps you have something in your fabric stash that is just waiting for the opportunity to see the light of day. Donna and I will show you how to evenly and effortlessly create the ruffles and then stitch them to the fabric. As you find out throughout this 2-part series, the scarves can be made any size, any length that you'd like. We started with a 9-inch width of base fabric and then some ruffles. This version has a double ruffle. And Donna, you started off with
basically a 5-inch strip, and then I just continued to cut yardage.
And this has been folded in half and then serged the edges. But you could also just use a single layer of fabric. And
I had a rolled hem on one edge and then a normal narrow 3-thread stitch on the other.
And you can see that this has already been ruffled or gathered. You could gather it with 2 rows of basting stitches, but what we're going to show you is the use of a ruffling foot. It kind of looks like a dinosaur to me, but it works so well. You can set the guide to place a tuck every 1, 6, or 12 stitches, excuse me, not inches. We're going to set it at every 6 stitches, and the fabric ruffle goes through a guide. And then as it stitches, there's a fork that kind of gathers the fabric or tucks the fabric, and then of course you're going to stitch over those tucks. And Donna, you're going to do that.
And what I have in here again is my strip of fabric that's about 1.5 to 2 inches wide, and it has a rolled edge on one edge and just a narrow 3-thread on the other. And the gathering foot, every 6th stitch, it's tucking the fabric to create a very even gather. And you just stitch, yards of length to complete your ruffle. And then when you're all done, you can then attach it to your scarf. And I have some very unique attachments to taper the ruffle to the scarf itself.
So we're going to demonstrate this on the single layer of the ruffle, and rather than having to finish the edge, that single edge, I'm going to show you how to place it on your fabric. Along one of the long edges, place the short edge to the fabric And I'm just going to pin it to the board. You'd be pinning the layers together and then angle or taper the long edge to meet the ruffled edge. Or taper the ruffle, excuse me, to meet the long edge. And when you'd start to stitch, you'd be stitching that corner into place.
And what's really nice is that you're covering that raw edge when you're sewing. And when you stitch all 4 sides and come around to the last corner, then you can again taper the end over the beginning.
So here I have my starting point, and I'm just going to fold that edge downward. And assuming that my pin was the stitching line, you'd stitch over the edge and then just cut off that excess fabric. Now you're going to meet right sides together, a second layer of fabric, leaving an opening about 6 inches so that you're able to turn it right side out.
Right.
And this shows the closure of the overlap of the ruffles on the double ruffle, and then you would need to hand stitch the opening closed. So the ruffle adds weight and adds grace, perfect again for a specialty fabric evening gown, or perhaps you'd make it in a chalet that could be more casual. But the ruffle adds a feminine touch and adds great weight to the scarf, making it a great version to try with your ruffling foot. Silk ribbon is the fabric of this lovely scarf. Select 8 to 10 2-yard cuts of ribbon and zigzag them together. The sewing is very simple, the result, dramatic. Hand-dyed silk ribbon is a very popular type of ribbon, and as you can see, the colors are like watercolor, shading from one shade to the other. It's just lush. You don't have to have a very wide scarf. And this was created with 2-yard cuts of ribbon. You can see several different pieces put together. And we have 2 methods to create this. And Donna, yours is to work with a stabilizer.
What I like to use is a water-soluble stabilizer, and I'm actually pinning my ribbon to the stabilizer. And again, I'm working with a 2-yard length of each ribbon strip, but also I have a smaller sample here just to show you the stitching process. And basically I have a zigzag set up in my machine, and I have it at a fairly narrow width, like a 2.5. And again, I'm simply making sure that my fabrics or my ribbons are butting together on the stabilizer, and I'm simply securing them all together.
Now you're leaving a little fringe at the end.
Right, and at this moment they're very irregular. I could add beads or whatever when the stabilizer is removed.
Then after stitching the width that you like,
again, you would immerse it in water and the stabilizer would remove, and again, it's kind of a corn-based stabilizer, which means
cornstarch, right.
It'll kind of wash away quickly.
Yes, it certainly will. Another option is to work with an edge joining foot. You may have one of these in your accessory box and exactly wonder what to work with it. It has a toe or appendage down the center, and you can place a ribbon on both sides of this appendage so the ribbons kind of kiss together, and then do the zigzag stitching. This helps you give a guide at which point to place the ribbon. So I've already started to stitch, and it's not necessary to need the stabilizer for this technique. I'm just placing the ribbons on both sides of that little toe of the foot, and I'm stitching. But before I do the stitching, let me just show you that I have placed, as Donna mentioned, variegated thread in the needle and also in the bobbin so that it blends with the hand-dyed silk fabrics. Because it is ribbon and we're not sewing on a stabilizer, I do like to work with a very fine needle. A size 90 is critical in my opinion, in our opinion, and a sharp is generally the needle choice to work with. So you need a new size 60 needle. We'll go back to the sewing machine and then place the ribbon on both sides of that edge joining section and zigzag. And the fabrics meet together, or the ribbons meet together, because I'm making certain that I'm placing them on both sides of this, and you just stitch.
And the edge joining foot too is used a lot in heirloom sewing where they're joining laces together, so it's perfect for ribbon.
Exactly. And I'll just bring this up to show you that it really works together very quickly. So we have the zigzag along the edges. It kind of glistens a little bit because we have the little metallic thread in the ribbon. And then here is, again, the example that Donna created, working with 8 to 10 ribbon sizes, a variety of sizes on the wash-away stabilizer. So ribbon scarf, you can choose the length and choose the width. Just do the zigzagging. Our last project features the ever-popular polyester fleece. The first fleece scarf is something you can make for the little kids in your life. The mitten scarf is functional while sporting a unique pocket shape that can showcase felting accents. It's another sensational scarf project that is enjoyable and quick to make. During this whole series, we've featured so many scarves that are very fast to work with. And Donna, this is one of the quickest projects.
It's really quick. I cut it about 7 inches wide, and what you do is you can put a tape measure around a little person's neck and kind of determine how long to make the scarf. And then we have kind of oversized mittens on there. You can kind of trace their hands and just make an oversized mitten design. And then what we have featured on there too is just felting on the mitten. And what I have here is a little brush, my felting tool, and the mitten that I'm working on, and also my needle puncher. It felts.
And this is roving.
This is roving, and I have some on display here. And I've simply, what it is, it's a non-twisted yarn, and I'm just kind of laying it on the mitten kind of in a zigzag, kind of a knitted look, and I'm just going to secure it to the fleece. And I would do this till I have it firmly blended together.
Because the felting needles embed the fibers into the fabric.
Right, and I chose for the mitten itself the reverse side. As you can see from the original one, I would have felted it longer, and then simply place it on your finished cutout piece and stitch around it.
And add a backing.
Right, and I simply edge stitch. You can always also use maybe decorative blade on the edge too to change the look.
And we'll show you that in a few minutes because our next fleece project is a supersized pocket. You can make this for your favorite football team or soccer team, wear to the game. And this particular project can only take about, I'd say 15 to 20 minutes to create. Here is the finished scarf. This is
basically 12 inches wide, and it's 60 to 72 inches long depending on the width of your fabric. And the pocket areas are 12 by 18, and basically they're double the width.
the depth of the pocket.
depth of the pocket. And I did put in a stay tape kind of in the pocket area just to build in reinforcement.
Here we crease the fold and then just a little stabilizing tape to prevent
Yes.
that from exactly just stretching out, and then you overlap all your layers together. And if we look at this finished pocket, you'll see that we marked 2 inches in from the edge of the fabric and then just stitched all the way around. We curved the edge after the stitching. This is about as fast as you can get for a project, but after the stitching, then placed a decorative blade in the traditional 45 millimeter blade housing, and then just cut all of the edges so that you have the kind of a fast finish. The fleece doesn't ravel.
Right, and it's a really fast project, nice and warm, and it's a great project to do in a few minutes.
So you have a pocket at both ends, and easy to make, as we said before, and it's the big pocket scarf made out of polyester fleece. When I get the question asked, I would like to learn how to sew, but where do I start? My answer is scarves. Scarves are the great place to start because perhaps in a half an hour to an hour you'll have a finished project and you can wear it right away. And Donna, we did a variety of fabrics and techniques.
Right, we started with basically, right here we have a no-sew scarf. It's just tying knots. We've also went and had like a ruffled scarf, which requires maybe a little more time. We also have this wonderful bias scarf.
In the first program we did this, yes.
And how simple, you don't have to worry about finishing the seams. And then the last one here that we have on the table is the chenille scarf, and the way it blooms is just great.
Donna, thanks for being my guest,
Thank you.
and thanks for watching Sewing with Nancy. Bye for now.
Nancy has written a fully illustrated book entitled Sensational Scarves, which includes all the information from this two-part series. It's $14.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the book, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2403. Order item number BK2403, Sensational Scarves, credit card orders only. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at sewingwithnancy.com for more information on this program. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Classe Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Rowenta. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zieman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.